Welcome to the Authors Adventure Summit, where 28 publishing legends reveal their top secret strategies for launching a book to bestseller. Today, Rocky Callan is with me to talk about what it takes to be an author, both on the inside and stuff you can do on the outside to make your author journey more successful. Rocky Callan believes in the power of stories, and she creates sacred catalysts for women to unleash them. She pulls on her writing and publishing experience as well as extensive behavioral therapy background to create experiences that not only allow women to finish their manuscripts, but also support them in their journey so that by the end they are confident authors, ready to be seen and celebrated as thought leaders. Love it. So Rocky, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get into publishing?
Absolutely. So it was a long journey. And this is actually part of the piece that I always share with clients is that I always wanted to be an author, always wanted to be a novelist. And ever since I was a little girl. And then I shoved that dream aside and then did all the things I thought I, quote unquote, should do. And so finally, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I found my old notes from the very first book that I wanted to write. And when I found that, I realized that if I was going to have my daughter and really ask her to follow her dreams, then it was time for me to start living mine. And so from that moment on, I started writing. And I face a lot of internal and external negativity through that process. But when I finally launched my first novel, it became an instant bestseller and was #1 on the charts right out of the gate within the first 24 hours. And so going through that experience, that shoving aside of the dream, that pushing through the obstacles to that final moment of confirmation, affirmation is something that I really want other authors, aspiring authors, to recognize in their own journeys, that sometimes they're the ones that have shoved this dream aside, and sometimes they're in the thick of all the obstacles and pain. And I want to show them that all of it is part of the journey, and it's just a matter of keep pushing through.
So what was your first book and what was it about?
Sure. So my first novels were young adult fiction. And the first novel was actually dark fantasy. And it's funny because people who knew me as this like really bright, peppy gal. And the story was so dark and twisted. And it's great because you allow so much of your imagination to flood the pages. The last novel I wrote was about a young woman who takes her own life on the first page and then is forced to face the brokenness that she's left behind. And that's actually the book that was just picked up by a literary agent.
Wow, that kind of gave me goosebumps. That sounds like a really
Thank you.
crazy, amazing story. Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you as an author, and probably what's fantastic about you being an author is you have to go deep into your own psyche and your mind and your emotions. And so I have a feeling that that's one thing that you know how to bring out in other authors. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with the last novel I wrote, it was very intimate and personal. It was a lot of actual life experiences that I'd kept secret for a long time. And so the writing of those things really tore me apart and put me back together again. And that is what I see with clients, and that's what I see with just people who go through this journey and through this process when it's truly intimate, heartfelt, and raw and real. People want to share their life stories. They want to share their life missions. But in order to do that, they have to feel worthy and deserving of sharing that story. And so a lot of times when they go into the writing process, they'll say, oh, I don't have enough time. I'm feeling writer's block today. I feel like I'm getting opposition from every angle, if it's just not the right time, maybe someday. And really those, they're excuses. And some of them can seem so legitimate, but more often than not, they are disguises for our fear and insecurities. And so when I'm talking to an author and she's talking about what's blocking her, and a lot of times things that are really common are feeling like they will betray the people who they are going to speak about in their story, especially if it's in a negative light. They feel like, who am I to write this book, or this book has been written so many times, why should I even try? Or there's so many better writers out there, who do I think I am to put my words out there too? Like, all of these insecurity and fears come to the surface, and it's really important to work through them on a very deep level in order for them to overcome those things, because also in the overcoming of that allows you to have the mind space to create. But also, all of those things are also blocks to be seen. So if your manuscript is just written and stays on your computer for the rest of your lifetime, who does that serve? It serves no one. And so you also have to have the confidence that you are worthy, you are deserving, you are knowledgeable, you are the expert, you are the wise one in whatever mission or story or expertise you have, and bring it forward to the world and be unshakable in that confidence. And that all comes from within. None of that's external. We have to work through all of those things from the inside out.
That is amazing. And so then when you get through that process and they've finished their book and they have their completed manuscript, and maybe they even get to hold it in their hands, what kind of transformation do you see with your group of authors?
Mm-hmm. It is phenomenal. It is phenomenal. And there's milestones along the way. The author that writes her first page, the author that first shares that she's going to write her book, the author that says, I finished my manuscript, the author that goes through the grueling and rigorous editorial process. Every time they reach one of those milestones, there is this almost startled awe that they actually did it, and to see how far they have come in such a short time. Like, there was one woman that I worked with, and she had been really faced with so much negativity in terms of old mentors and teachers who said she wasn't a good student, she wasn't a good writer, that she had the writing capabilities of a fifth grader, and all this before she went to get her graduate degree. But she harbored all of those things still within her. And so she wanted to write this book about unstoppable tenacity. And then we spoke, and within 5 months, she had written her first draft. She had edited it, formatted it, launched it, and it became a bestseller. And she looked back and thought, I remember when I thought I couldn't be a writer, and now here I am, celebrated as one. And that it's such a celebration of who we are, of how far we've come, of our tenacity, of our audacity, that it's just such a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I've never had a client that I hadn't worked in depth who wasn't in tears at some point during the journey, and tears of, can I really do this? And tears of, I can't believe I did. And it's a remarkable thing to witness. And it's one of my favorite pieces of the whole process.
Oh, I'll bet. It must be just incredible motivation to just keep going and keep doing what you're doing, to have that kind of success and to see lives really change. That's amazing. So you have an event that I think is quite possibly one of the most life-changing, brilliant, exciting, fun events on the planet.
Thank you.
It's called Bleed Ink in Bali. So could you tell us more about what that's all about and what kinds of things you guys do there?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my heart is all wrapped up in this creation. Is essentially the signature piece of my whole business. And I realized it had to be when I went there for the first time and I offered the retreat, because each woman that came with the expectation to write her book, but they each left with a completely transformed business model and a confidence and an epic level of expansion that they didn't even realize that they were seeking. And so that's really what I want to be a witness of and to instigate in women, is that expansion. So the Bleed Ink experience in Bali is a 3-month group coaching experience where before we have this 10-day retreat in this lush, secluded area in Bali. They have interaction with me so we can plan their book, we can look at their business, we can look into their soul story, their mission, their message, and how it all fits together. So that way, when they come to the retreat, they're ready to go. And then during the retreat, each woman, we do discussions, we do brainstorming, we do readings, we do have actual workshops and writing time, but it's also about the experiences. And I really come from a spiritual persuasion around all of this work. And so we do a lot of spiritual exercises. So we go with a healer to a purification ritual where we're standing under a waterfall and we're releasing all of the negativity, the fears, the insecurities, and we're allowing that to be washed away. And then we're going to be doing a sunrise mountain trek where we start in the darkness, trekking up the mountain, and by sunrise, we stand together on the summit. And it's just that process. The whole retreat experience is about their story, but the bravery required to live that story to the fullest. And so it's a writing retreat, but it's much more than a writing retreat. And then afterwards, because a lot of times, we are rearing to go, go to these incredible events and we feel like our world has changed. But then there's we get home and it's just oh, wait, life is life and it's in the way. And so we let all that fall apart. And so after the retreat, we have another month together where one is I'm helping them as they're teasing out the final pieces of their book. Also, the world beyond the book, what this book means in terms of their life or their business. And then I give them a critique of their work as well. So it's this complete and whole experience where I'm really seeking to find a literary, soulful sisterhood for these stories to be birthed, and then also their greatest stories to come forward.
Sounds like an amazing experience.
Thank you.
I love what you've done there.
Thank you so much. I love it too.
So, do you ever work with men, or you work exclusively with women?
I work exclusively with women, but all my marketing is towards women, everything. But I've considered opening up because I love doing VIP days. I love going intense. I like going deep into the work and then it to be over. So that's why I love the retreat, and that's why I love VIP days. And it really requires, when I work with a man, that they resonate with the spiritual approach, with the desire to unearth the blocks and release them, with using their story as a catalyst for greater change in the world, in themselves and to their tribe. So it's more of, I think I just naturally attract more women and I speak to women, but I'm also about, if there's a soulmate client that comes my way, then I'm open to receive them too.
Yeah, that's great. I just kind of wonder, if it's a man, do they just write the book and they don't have to worry about all the blocks? But surely some men must have blocks with writing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was actually just talking to a man a few weeks ago, and he's like, wait, what about us, Rocky? I'm like, sorry, bro. But what I think it is that when I do group experience, a lot of times women are so vulnerable that they just feel that safe container space with women. And, but I've met such phenomenal men along the way as well who are really interested and ready to do that kind of deep work, that in the future, I feel like there will be more of a place for me to serve them.
Yeah, that could be, as men realize that they are also spiritual beings, and they may have things that they have to uncover before they can actually write the book. So yeah, I can see that happening. So let's get into what it actually takes to create a best-selling book. So like, what are your top tips for creating a bestseller?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and remind me, Lisa, are you talking to fiction, nonfiction, everybody?
It is everybody. Sure.
Awesome. Perfect. So, because I love both crowds. So here is one of the biggest mistakes that I see, especially in the entrepreneurial space, is that they'll whip out a book. They did something where like, I wrote my book in a weekend and then I published it to Amazon on Monday. Like, no, stop. You're so mean to your book. Is that you really need designated marketing time. So even if you write your book quickly, and even writing your book quickly, you also attach editing time. I don't care if you're a PhD in English, you need to edit your book thoroughly and completely. But with marketing, it all comes down to exposure. And we can't just say, oh, I'm going to launch it and then they will come. No. You have to be in constant invitation mode. And so one of the things I really talk about is that it's almost a seductive dance where you are, right when you decide to write your book, you should be sharing, I'm writing my book. And as you go along the way, you should be teasing out clips of you writing, or ahas in the writing process, or paragraphs from the book itself, things that will bring your desired readership in closer, and things that you want to do in terms of actually launching that bestseller is know that numbers matter. And so you want to, if you're in the entrepreneurial spaces, what you're going to be looking at are JV partners who will share on your release day, getting in the first 72 hours, really hitting podcasts and guest posts and blogs and anything related to your book's theme. You want to be anywhere and everywhere. Now, I also am a firm believer that you need to honor your book's heart. So if your book is a very intimate book, or if your book's a very like pow book, then you have to honor that. You don't want to take something that's very intimate and vulnerable and like life after divorce and healing from the pain and make it seem like a party, depending on the feel and vibe of your book. So for example, all of my novels became bestsellers when I launched them. They are all launched very differently. The first one, I did the blast of social media. I had over 100 blogs sharing my my release day. I had a giveaway. I did a month of promotion, all of this stuff. And the last book was a very intimate, raw book. And what I did, because it was all around suicide, was I reached out to as many communities as I could and said, have you lost someone to suicide? I'm doing a Remembrance Day. And so the whole book was actually not at the front and center of my campaign. It was these stories and the recognition that these stories are everywhere. And then that funneled down into the book itself. So there's so many different ways to market a book. There's so many different ways to launch a book. But what you really need to know is you can't launch alone. You need support. So if that support, your entrepreneurial colleagues, if you're a fiction writer, then you're looking at blogs that review books, that are avid readers, things of that sort, and really target ones that the genre of your novel is fitting for them. And you want to make sure that you have advanced reader copies to people. You want to make sure you have build an email list as early as possible. And so some of those teases you can be sending out along the way. You want people to know that the book is coming, but then also be aching to buy it. So you can't do like a one and done thing. You need to be constantly teasing them or inviting them. And then a lot of books you'll see too nowadays, and this is extremely effective, is to create some sort of gift for people who buy on launch day or pre-order or within the first 72 hours of release, where entrepreneurs, they'll offer a checklist, or they'll offer a meditation, or they'll offer a smaller program, and they put in their, you put in the sales details, your Amazon buy number, and then you're replied back this set of materials. And that is something that entrepreneurs have been extremely successful with. And it really, in terms of getting that bestseller status, really makes it so that your ideal readership comes running towards you, because if they know that they can buy your book and get all of this stuff, if they buy now, then they'll buy now. People love free stuff. So when you can give that to them in a way that really honors both you and your reader, it's a win-win situation, and it brings your book to that level of visibility that it deserves.
Would it be safe to say that in order to get that freebie on launch day, they would need to enter their email address? Would that be an opt-in situation?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So what you do, generally what it looks like, and you'll see it for entrepreneurs, is you go down and then it says for freebies, put in your receipt number and your email address. And then, so it builds your list while proving that they did purchase. Insider alert is, a lot of times people say, well, how am I going to be able to manage all of that? And most of the time, it is an auto mailer that responds. So it's very much an honor system, in that you're not thinking that they are giving, some false number
right,
when they buy. But at the same time, even if they did, because I'm all about infinite generosity, is then they're on your list. So if they did all of that, they're on your list. And they have exposure to you, and they will fall more and more deeply in love with you, your brand, and your message, because they have gotten that much more of you. So I always say, actually, especially for entrepreneurs, things that have your voice or video are really effective, because the more and more exposure you have to that reader, the more they feel that they intimately know you, or that they know, like, and trust you that much more. So that's another point that, Lisa, I know that we've talked about, is that it's not just about the book sale, it's what comes after the book sale, especially for entrepreneurs, that really allows for maximum wealth creation, but also visibility, exposure, and the elevation of one's personal brand.
Yeah. So I'm going to put a pin in that. And I wanted to ask you about JV partners and how to get them.
Yes.
I mean, I know people, but maybe I don't know the right people for my particular book launch. So how would I go about getting JV partners for my book launch?
Absolutely. So there are several ways to do it. The straightforward way is say you are a fan of certain influencers, is you can go to an influencer and say, you always want to make it about them. So what do they get? So maybe if they have an affiliate link for the buy code, or if you'll give them X amount of books to give away to their tribe. You want to think of how you can give to these JV partners in a way that will feel really good for both of you. And sometimes there's a negotiation piece with that. So that's something to to know. And JV Partners, it generally begins with a letter. And you want to start off saying, one, why you're approaching them in the first place. A lot of times people, and this is more of my approach to it, is a lot of people, they start off with a paragraph all about themselves and their story and their book, and then they go into why they're reaching out to this person. And I don't find that effective, because somebody never wants to open up their inbox and be like, who is this person and why are they talking about themselves? So you open up with saying, I saw you in blankety blank interview and I was so moved by your story of, and I felt inclined to message you because I am launching a book, blankety blank, that is perfectly aligned with your message and mission. And I feel like your readership or your fans or your tribe would also resonate and be impacted by this blankety blank book. So you bring it to them, you bring it to why you're reaching out to them, and you're introduce the book itself, but you're not going into it in that first paragraph. The second paragraph can be more along the lines of the book itself, your mission, your message, your platform. And then the last bit is allowing for either the negotiation or saying, if you're interested in this, please get back in touch with me. We can go on the phone or we can discuss this via email. However, you want to keep those initial emails as short as possible, and then allow the details to emerge in future emails or phone calls. So focusing one on anyone who, and these can be like smaller blogs, these can be just starting out entrepreneurs or whoever, all the way up to the big guns, right? So when I did my 100 bloggers for my novel, there were some bloggers that had like 100 people on their list or their Facebook page, and then another one that had 60,000 people on their Facebook page. And I treated them the same. I gave them the same reverence. And so that's really important when you go into this process, is that sometimes the person with 100 people, those 100 people are raving fans of that person. So look at who has engaged tribes. Look at who has the following. Look at whose message is perfectly aligned with yours or is complementary to yours. And you will basically set up a research day or weekend and start to find those people. And you want to at least reach out to 20 minimum. But I always like to say, go for as many as you can.
Sure. So when you're talking with affiliates, what are the things that are expected of you as the author? Are we talking about commission on book sales? Are we talking about a commission on something bigger than a book sale? What is expected?
Sure. And it's really different. I will say that's really different. For fiction and bloggers, there's no expectation. So that's one thing. Generally, for fiction, you'll see a lot of times where there's a big giveaway. And so the bloggers just like to bring buzz and excitement to their tribe because there's the giveaway, but the giveaway is across the board for everybody. For entrepreneurs, it depends on your level. One is that there are people that do things where, if you buy, for example, let me think of Gary Vee had a book launch and he said, well, if you guys, for him, it's, he knew that people wanted contact with him. So he sold his book in bulk. And then in return, they had the opportunity to go and meet him in his New York City office. But for a lot of people, sometimes it's not so much the book sale. It's about something. It's about something. It's about something beyond it, possibly. JV partners want something. So like say the book leads to like a group program, then they'll become an affiliate of that program. That's a model you see very often in the entrepreneurial spaces. But in terms of when it's just the book on its own and you're not trying to piece off like a large affiliate program for another thing, it's really showcasing, giving insane amount of value to their tribe, where they're pretty hands off in that, where they, you're the one who's bringing that value. So maybe it's a free group call for their tribe, depending on your expertise. Maybe it is a Q&A session. Maybe it is a VIP day with you if they do direct the most people to you, or the most book sales, or however that works. It's so open-ended. And so for some people, they'll expect absolutely nothing in return. And then for other people, they might be more interested in some sort of affiliate program or some sort of exclusive access to you before, during, or after your book launch.
Oh, that's fantastic information. It's always kind of just puzzled me, how does this affiliate thing even work, Because I see it all the time. The emails come to me and I'm like, who is this person, because they're all doing affiliate things. And sometimes I'll get like 2 or 3 emails, 4 or 5 emails in the same day, and it's the same offer, but from different sources. You're like, oh my gosh, this person just landed in my inbox. So it's really interesting to hear how that actually works. Okay, so we kind of jumped around, we kind of circled it, but I wanted to get back to the part where we talk about it's not just book sales. So what can an author do to use their book to create wealth?
Absolutely. Awesome. This is so exciting to me because I love talking about personal brands and platforms. So just quickly, for fiction authors, generally their biggest moneymaker is writing their next book. Honestly, the more books you create, the more you're consumed, then that's awesome. But what you'll also find a lot of times nowadays with fiction authors is that they have merchandise. And they have, like, if they're a fantasy writer, there's t-shirts and there's, little plush toys, or there's bumper stickers, all these different things. There's swag, things like that. And so they'll create a merchandise store associated with their business, and they'll do it in a way that generally they're pretty hands-off in the management, creation, and shipping. So that's something that just generates on its own. That's one cool thing in terms of for fiction authors. Entrepreneurs, gold mine. Because this is the thing. This is what I say with books is that, I'm a high-end coach. The investment to work with me has been and is on the higher end of the spectrum. But and say you, as an entrepreneur, you're similar, or even not, even if you're several $100s or something, for you to give your heart fully and completely in a book is one of the most generous acts you will ever do, because you're allowing someone who has a need, who has a question, it depends on, who you're serving, your message, your mission, all of that. The before and after story, that's another thing, is your book should have a before and after story in terms of who the reader is when they come on to read that first page and who the reader is when they finish it. For entrepreneurs and for thought leaders, is if you give your all in your book, and I'm a firm believer that I don't think about, you should hold back. You should make your book an infomercial. You should, say, I'm going to give you the 10 secrets and then tease them and say, well, you'll find out in my program. Like, I don't like any of that
Right,
stuff.
it's annoying.
It's so annoying. And it's out of integrity to me. I feel like if we're here to serve, then we must serve. And then that level of generosity will be responded to. So in your book, you write your book, you give your all. And then what will happen by the end of that book is that the reader will be so wrapped up in the world you've created, in the message, in the intention, in the love, in the expertise, in the transformation that you've offered in that book, their natural inclination is say, what's next? And as an entrepreneur, you have to provide that outlet. What's next? So for some people, we can read a book and our whole lives can change. Or more often is we'll read a book and we will unearth all of these things that we recognize, oh, we need to change. And sometimes we cannot change on our own. We need that group mentorship so that we feel less isolated and supported, or we need that one-on-one mentorship to really serve as the catalyst for a transformation in our business or in our life or in our marriages or in our parenting, whatever it is. And so you, as the author, as the entrepreneur, need to think of, what would my reader naturally desire next? And when you do that, you don't want to jump up to, I gave you a $10 book, now here's my $10,000 program. Don't want to necessarily do that. You can, but what I would suggest is to create something that's passive income or a group program that allows the reader more exposure to you and feels much more confident and in that investment. So something that's within a few $100s or less is just this natural no-brainer after they've read your book. And one thing is, you have their email addresses. A lot of times you'll see very effectively done by entrepreneurs, especially high-level entrepreneurs, is that they touch base, they bought the book and time goes on. And they said, I remember when you bought my book 2 months ago, and I just want to check in. How are you doing? Did you read it? Do you need support? Do you, come join my free group, Facebook group, or come join this live Q&A, free live Q&A. And you basically are giving the reader more and more exposure to your brand and your platform and your services, that they'll slowly go through a funnel that brings them higher and higher on that ladder. And for some people, you just have your book and you have your group program, and that's awesome. Like, rock it, roll with it. But think about, could you create something that's passive? Could you create a meditation series? Could you create a checklist? All of those pieces, if you center it around each book is essentially its own little world, and you're just serving and serving and serving, and that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, yes, it's the most fun thing to look at a business, to look at a person's core message and their book idea, and then to tease out all of the levels of service that they can create and offer from there. But remember to constantly nurture your tribe. So if they put in their email address, continue to nurture them. Don't forget about them, even if it's articles or your just regular email newsletter, or talking about your next experience or book. To always keep them in the loop so that they keep that exposure to you, that they keep remembering your name. But then do not be afraid to offer them to step up on that ladder, because most people need it even before they know they need it, and they just need that whisper to be nudged forward.
Oh, that's great. I've always kind of felt like the book is just like step number one, and then the deeper you go and the more access you provide to people, that's just kind of the next logical step. And I just really love that authors have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So we have been talking for quite a while now. I think we better get to the freebie.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you have a really great the Bleed Ink checklist. So it's a breakdown of the key steps an author needs to take to go from book idea to book launch. And I did actually download this today, And I wanted, I just kind of wanted to see what you had. And it's so good. It's like every single step. And I got a little bit overwhelmed, but I'd rather have it written down in a checklist than swirling around in my head. So that was really, really good. To get that, you can go to rockycallen.com, bleed-ink-checklist, and the link for that will be below this video, so you don't have to remember that. And do you have any last words for our viewers today?
One is, Lisa, I want to say thank you for having me.
Yeah,
you put so much time, effort into this whole experience, and it's an honor to be here with your tribe. And then for the person watching, and to me, it's irrelevant where you are. You can be dreaming about writing your book, or you can be about to launch your first book, or you could be 10 books in. Just know that if you've had this whisper, this desire, that it's time to 10x your urgency and to create from a place of love and service and with the absolute confidence in your inevitable success. And we are a huge tribe, us writers, book coaches, experts. There's so many of us. And so if you need support, go out and search for that. But always know that the answers are within you, the words are within you, and it's your job to let them out.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you again for being with me today. It's been my pleasure, and I'm so pleased to have had a chance to talk with you in person. So thanks so much.
Thank you.